Welcome to my channel. Today I will be reading from Our Let's Not Me. This is I was home alone at the lake cabin. Then I saw him watching me. When I was 14, I used to spend every summer at my uncle's cabin in northern Minnesota. My parents would drop me off there for 2 or 3 weeks while they stayed back home for work. It was their way of giving me a little freedom and maybe themselves a break too. The cabin wasn't huge, just 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a small dock that led to a quiet lake. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. No neighbors, no streetlights, no cell signal, just pine trees, water, and silence. My Uncle Dave was a chill guy. He'd fish during the day, drink at night, and sometimes vanish into town to run errands, which I later realized meant meeting someone at the local dive bar. Most evenings I had the cabin to myself, and honestly, I liked it that way. One evening around 9:30, I was lying on the old couch with a pack of pretzels, watching some horror DVDs on a portable player. Outside, the sun had completely vanished behind the trees. Just blackness, heavy, suffocating blackness. I got up to grab a soda from the fridge, and as I stood in the kitchen, I heard the faintest knock on the front door. Not a loud knock, just a light tap, tap, tap. I froze. It wasn't windy. There were no animals on the porch, and nobody should have been out there. Not this late. I whispered, "Uncle Dave?" No answer. My instincts told me not to open the door. So I crept over to the side window, careful not to step on the creaky floorboards. The porch light was off, but the moonlight was just bright enough that I could see a silhouette. Someone standing perfectly still just outside the door, not moving, not speaking, just standing. I ducked out of sight and waited. The knocking stopped. I locked the front door and ran to the back to double check that one too. Then I turned off every light in the house and sat in the dark. I thought maybe it was some lost hiker, but even then, something felt wrong. Around 10:15, my uncle still wasn't back. I decided to call his phone, forgetting there was no reception. So I did the next best thing. I turned the DVD back on, turned the volume low, and tried to pretend nothing happened. That worked for maybe 10 minutes, then I heard it again. This time from the side of the cabin, closer to my bedroom window. Another knock. Not on the door, but the glass. Tap, tap. I crept into the room and peeked through the blinds. There was a man, pale face, crooked smile, greasy gray hair that hung in strands around his forehead. He was leaning forward, hands cupped around his face, peering inside, like he was trying to see me. I ducked. I stayed on the floor, holding my breath. Eventually, I heard footsteps walking along the gravel path that circled the cabin. Slow, deliberate, crunch. Crunch, then nothing. I waited an hour. Still no sign of my uncle. At this point, every single noise, the house creaking, a loon crying in the distance, branches shifting, felt like a threat. I eventually locked myself in the bathroom, sat in the tub, and waited. It was nearly 1 a.m. when I finally heard my uncle's truck crunching up the driveway. I didn't even wait for the engine to shut off. I ran out and shouted for him. He could tell something was wrong immediately. I told him everything. The man, the knocking, the window, all of it. He didn't say a word. Just walked back to the truck, opened the glove box, and pulled out a revolver. We walked around the cabin, shining a big flashlight across the woods. No footprints, no broken branches, nothing disturbed. It was like the man had just disappeared, or never existed. My uncle didn't question me. He believed me, said he'd seen strange people around the lake before, loners who lived off-grid and didn't take kindly to visitors. That night, I slept with the revolver under my pillow. I didn't close my eyes until the sun came up. 2 days later, things got worse. I was out on the dock alone, just skipping rocks and listening to the silence when I noticed something floating about 15 feet from the shore. At first, I thought it was a dead fish. But when I squinted closer, I saw something that made my stomach turn. A plastic bag. Inside it, a bundle of cloth, like a hoodie or jacket, tied tight with duct tape. The bag was snagged on some weeds and drifting slowly. I went back to the cabin and told my uncle. He took one look at it, grabbed a rake, and carefully pulled it to shore. He sliced it open with his pocket knife. Inside was a hoodie stained with something dark, maybe mud, maybe blood. He didn't say a word, just bundled it back up, threw it into a trash bag, and said, "We're going home early." I didn't argue. That night, we packed our stuff and left before dawn. I haven't been back to that cabin since. My uncle sold it a few months later, said the area was getting too weird. I asked him once, years later, if he ever figured out who that man was. He said, "No clue, but I think he knew you were alone. And I think he was waiting for you to open that door." I still double-check the logs before I go to bed. Not because I'm scared of ghosts or monsters, but because I know there are real people out there, the kind who smile through your window and tap just to see if you'll answer. I was home alone at the lake cabin. Then I saw him watching me. From the Let's Not Meet subreddit, and now from my thoughts. I grew up in Wisconsin. So when I read stories like these, it always makes me think of all those cabins up north. You know, how secluded they are. How sometimes the nearest neighbor is a half a mile away. Yeah, it seems like a nice place to get away from it all, but it also seems pretty dangerous. Like, what if you need help? What if you run out of food or you get injured? Also, there are probably a lot of creepy people living in the woods nearby who are just waiting for some poor soul to stumble onto their property. So whenever I hear stories like these, it makes me never want to go to cabin ever again. Also, I have to admit, the story gave me goosebumps. It made me feel like I was right there in that cabin with the narrator. It is amazing how the author was able to use such vivid language to really bring the story to life. I could feel the darkness and my isolation of the cabin, the fear of the narrator as he's waiting for the knocking to stop. And of course, that terrifying scene where the narrator looks out the window and sees that man staring back at him. That is one creepy image that I will not soon forget. But it gets even better, because once I started reading this story, I couldn't put it down. I needed to know what happened next. And let me tell you, the ending is one of the most satisfying things I've read in a long time. The twist at the end was so unexpected and so disturbing that I literally gasped when I read it. And I'm still thinking about it now. The whole idea of that man being out there, watching me, waiting for me to open the door, gives me shivers. It's one of those stories that really stays with you long after you finish reading it. And that's why I love Reddit so much. Because you never know what kind of stories you're gonna find. I mean, this one was scary as hell, but it was also really well written and really thought out. So if you like scary stories, if you like mysteries, if you like stories that will keep you up at night, then I highly recommend checking out the Reddit's Let's Not Meet. I promise you won't be disappointed. Anyways, that is all for me today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And I'll see you next time.